An SEP, he said, is something we can't see or don't see, or our brain doesn't let us see because we think that it's somebody else's problem. That's what SEP means, somebody else's problem. The brain just edits it out. It's like a blind spot. If you look at it directly, you won't see it unless you know precisely what it is. Your only hope is to catch it by surprise out of the corner of your eye.
But even with all these specialized systems working away, the brain would be overloaded if it tried to tackle every detail of every object at once. So we just don't bother. We're all equipped with a means of selecting the key aspects of a scene one at a time. This attention system allows us to concentrate on one thing, while the rest of the world falls into the background. All this happens so automatically that we don't notice it. But our brains are constantly scanning the scene, not just passively analysing what's coming in, but actively deciding what it is it wants to see. It seems that we don't just have to point our eyes in the right direction, we also have to point our brains. The difference between these two men seems obvious. Their faces are different, their hair is different, even their shirts are a different colour. And yet an experiment by psychologists Dan Simons and Chris Chabris at Harvard reveals that our brains actually process very little of what comes in through the eyes.
In this experiment, a subject comes up to a counter and a first experimenter hands them a consent form. As soon as they finish signing the consent form, they hand it back to the first experimenter, who then takes the consent form, ducks down behind the counter to put it away, and a different experimenter then stands up and hands the subject a packet of information and sends them into a hallway where we ask them questions about it.
This wonderful experiment uncovers an aspect of the brain's attention system known as change blindness.
Change blindness is the idea that we often miss large changes to our visual world from one view to the next. We're often not able to see large changes that would appear to be perfectly obvious to somebody who knows they're going to happen.
And incredibly, in 75% of cases, the subjects don't notice a thing.
The lady who took me up here, she opened the door for me and told me to walk over to the desk.
This form.
Alright. I think there was a sign that said experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And a man there gave me a form to sign.
Mm-hmm.
There was the guy standing under a big sign that said experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And to my left there was like a pot with some dirt in it and some plastic containers.
Oh, I filled out a form.
Okay.
Right.
This form. How long would it be about before it's...
And I asked him how long it would take. He said about 10, 15 minutes or so.
I guess I have the time to do that.
Did you notice anything unusual at all after you signed the consent form?
I just signed it, and I didn't even pay attention to anything that was written on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
After you handed it back to him, did you notice anything unusual happen at all?
If you could just take this into the next one.
No, I probably wasn't even looking that direction. I probably turned and looked towards the clear door. I saw some people there.
Okay.
Then I turned back and looked at him for a second.
Okay. Did you notice anything unusual at all after you signed the consent form?
No. This is only going to take 5 or 10 minutes?
Yeah, it'll be real short.
Okay.
The person who stood up was actually a different person.
Okay.
I gather you didn't notice that was different? No. A different person actually stood up and handed you this form and sent you out toward me. I gather from your reaction you didn't notice that?
No.
Okay. Don't feel bad about that. Actually, most of the time we find about 75% of people don't notice.
You serious?
Yeah. The person who stood up with the packet was actually a different person.
Wow.
Than the first person.
That is incredible.
So I gather you didn't see it then.
I didn't catch that, no.
Okay. What's really interesting is that some people notice these changes and other people don't notice these changes.
Okay, if you could just take this.
And we really don't yet have a good idea what separates those people who don't from those people who do. It might be that there are individual differences and some people are better able to detect these sorts of changes. But it's also possible that it's just coincidence, that the people who noticed it just happened to be focusing on a feature that changed. They just happened to be paying attention to the color of the person's shirt.
Take this into the next room.
And the people who failed to notice it just happened to be paying attention to something else.
The brain's attention system allows us actively to select what to look at. It makes us very good at concentrating on tasks, but it can also make us miss something happening right in front of our eyes. Magic is all about making us think we are seeing everything, when in fact we are missing the most important thing of all. Magicians exploit the brain's attention system to the extreme, but understanding how attention is organized in the brain has been a difficult challenge.